Okay, should you buy a new launch condo in 2022? Hello guys, Maverick here and welcome to another new video. As you can see, my backdrop has changed because, people have been complaining about my messy background. But today's topic will be about whether it's still a viable option to buy a new launch condo in 2022 given the sky-high prices by the developers. If you've been following property news lately, you'd know that Amo residents at Ang Mo Kio sold 98% of its units on launch date at an average price of 2,100 per square feet. That is honestly something unfathomable. How can the demand be so high given these prices? The previous few launches like Piccadilly Grand and Live at MB also saw 75% of their units sold on launch. Normanton Park, a development with over 1,800 units, managed to sell out in 1.5 years. There's so much hype and demand for new launches, but should you as a Singaporean really consider buying one? Before we get into that, maybe I should address some concerns that people are having with regards to property purchase in Singapore. I think there are three major concerns in 2022. First being the global inflation, second is the possibility of a recession, and lastly is the rising interest rates. So what caused the global inflation? So firstly, it was the supply chain disruption during COVID. There was a lot of quantitative easing by the US government, and recently the Russian-Ukraine war also played a part. So as you can see here, wars have been going on for the past few decades. They do not directly have a correlation to property prices in Singapore. Although I'd admit that the Russian-Ukraine war affects us because Russia is a very big exporter of raw materials. But won't the war and supply chain disruption just cause a cost-push inflation, making it more expensive to build houses in Singapore, therefore causing the prices of homes in Singapore to increase over time instead? Maybe you can take a look at the US stock market instead, since it moves in tandem with the property market in Singapore. As you can see here, the property price index actually follows the US stock market quite closely. But what's different is the extent of the falls and the rises. When the stock market crashes, the property market in Singapore is hit as well, but doesn't fall as hard. I'll be the first to admit that Singapore might see a recession in the coming years. But what I'm predicting is that when the stock market is down, many investors would rather buy more stable assets such as properties, especially so in Singapore since we have a slew of cooling measures protecting the market from extreme fluctuations. Furthermore, new property prices are affected by land prices, which are somewhat controlled by the Singapore government. So unless you think that the government would reduce the value of scarce land in Singapore, property prices will most certainly keep rising in the long run. Another major concern is the rising interest rates. But as you can see here, there is hardly any correlation between interest rates and property prices. In fact, interest rates are still considered low as of now. SORA's previous high was at 3.3% back in 2006. The current 1-month SORA is only at 1.8%. My personal prediction is that floating rates will stabilize at around 2.8%. Yes, your interest might affect your total payment, but as long as there's decent appreciation in your property, you'd still be profiting in the long run. Okay, I sidetracked a little, but back to the topic at hand. Should you buy a new launch condo? Honestly speaking, I don't think it's for everyone. First, you'd have to consider what kind of buyer you are. For me, I like to categorize buyers into 3 categories. The first being buying purely for own stay and possibly looking at a forever home. The second will be buying for own stay as well, but intends to use this property as a stepping stone for their next property purchase. And the third would be the pure investor. So if you're the first type of buyer, I'd find it hard to suggest buying a new launch condo. If you're already staying in a property but needs the sales proceeds to buy a new home, you'd have to sell, buy and rent until your home is completed 4 years later. And since capital gain is not your priority in looking for a forever home, the process, in my opinion, would be too much of a hassle. So your best option would probably be a resale condo. But if you insist on wanting a brand new unit, I'd suggest looking at a sub-sale that is going to TOP soon, so that your selling and buying timeline can match perfectly. Of course, if you do have the funds and are eligible for ABSD remission, or have another name to buy the new condo under, then of course you can go ahead with the purchase. For the second type, you're probably looking to buy your first or second property. If you're looking to get your first property and have the capacity to purchase a new launch condo, by all means go ahead, as a new launch is probably a better product for asset progression compared to a resale unit. However, if you're looking to purchase these with the sales proceeds of your first property, and you know that you will eventually have to sell the new launched condo a few years later, there are other things you have to think about. Like, where are you going to be staying when you've sold your first property and waiting for your new launch to be built? If you have a place to stay, then good. If not, what are your other options? Renting? Then you'd have to see how much the rental would cost you, as it will eat into your profits, which should be a big priority for you since you're looking for asset progression. Lastly, if you're an investor and you have a free name to buy a residential property, then I'd say a new launch condo is definitely worth considering if you're looking for capital appreciation. However, if you have to incur ABSD, I don't think that buying a residential property would be the best choice for you. The ABSD incurred can be quite steep and will definitely eat into your profits. And as an investor, that is not what you should be looking for. So maybe you can think about investing in commercial properties instead, since there's no ABSD involved and you can own as many commercial properties as you want. That being said, not all new launch condos have the potential for capital appreciation, and some projects will definitely have higher potential than others. There are so many factors to look out for when identifying a project with high potential for capital gains. The specific location, the development itself, the developers, the architects, the unit you've chosen, and most importantly, the entry price. There's no point in selecting the perfect development and the perfect unit if your exit price can't exceed your entry price. So here are some examples of projects that have been able to appreciate quite well from launch till date. Of course, in 2022, you'd be asking, since the entry price is already so high, can my exit price really be higher? If you ask the owners of these properties whether they thought the property was cheap when they bought it years ago, most of them would not have thought so. And the same goes for new launch properties in today's market. However, there are of course projects that hardly see any profits. Just like any other forms of investment, there are no guaranteed returns. Real estate is just a more stable asset compared to other products in the market. If you have a proper checklist and criteria, choosing the right unit to invest in can provide you with high and stable returns in the long run. Just to summarize, a new launch condo isn't really for everybody, and not every new launch condo is poised for capital appreciation or capital gains. So if you're interested to find out more about new launches, do contact me for a free consultation. There are a few upcoming developments that I do have my eyes on. With that, thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like, share and subscribe, and leave your questions in the comment sections down below. Bye!